Hello, everyone. This is Ed Brenniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. And my guest today is Adair Cates. Known Adair for a long time, actually quite long, but we don't see each other very often. But
It's been a while.
we used to do some work together in Asheville with a group called Lessons in Leadership, which was one of the finest little event groups that I've ever been a part of.
Yeah,
That was fun way back in the day.
absolutely.
So Adair, who are you and what do you do and why do you do it? And what do we need to know about your work?
Well, that's a big question. There's a
I
lot
like
there.
big
So
questions. Well, it's wide open. You just tell us what you want us to know.
I'll just talk. Okay, I'll just talk.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, even better.
I love it. I love it. Well, first and foremost, I am a mom. I have twin daughters and 3 bonus kids. And especially over the last few years with the pandemic and also with very tragically losing the father of my twins, my twin girls, family has really become a really important, probably, obviously, as I'm saying this, the number one part of my life that I keep in focus and that really drives the purpose of the work that I do and everything that I do in the world. So I like to say, yeah, first and foremost, I'm a mom and I'm CEO of this home, making sure that everything is in order and operating and running in our home, which is a microcosm for everybody's home, is a little microcosm of the bigger world. So in my work, I actually work from home, and since the pandemic have done very, very little travel to do the work that I do. And the work that I do consists of leading leaders or guiding leaders through conscious leadership training. And that's, conscious and leadership can be 2 very loaded terms. And I think we'll probably start to unpack what my version of conscious leadership is as we talk today. Just a couple of the concepts that are foundational in conscious leadership. And I do that both inside of a community that I'm a part of called XCHANGE, that is actually run by my partner, John. And I also do that inside of companies and take organizations, leadership teams, and sometimes leaders and their teams through, 6 to 18 to 24 month conscious leadership journey, which is very heavily focused on the inner world of the leader, the inner work that is required to be a leader. And it's a journey I've been on for a long time. I worked inside of organizations in leadership development for, I guess 7 or 8 years, several different organizations. And then in 2019, decided to go out on my own. And since then, I've really been dialing in what is it that matters most to me. And through a series of both, learning as I go and also just the way my life has unfolded with some pretty difficult challenges and traumas over the last few years, I've really found that this work of conscious leadership is deeply connected to my own soul and my own purpose. And it has definitely become a way for me to transform my own pain into service and into a way of helping other people. So very passionate about that. I don't know what else you might want to know about me.
Well, that's an amazing introduction to you, and I'm curious how you define this idea of conscious leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll do my best to be as clear and concise as I can possibly be. I think one of the easiest ways for me to describe what we do is actually to talk a little bit about how it started, and how it was birthed and how it's evolved. And it actually started with meeting a gentleman by the name of Dr. Daniel Friedland, who wrote a book called Leading Well from Within. He came into the XCHANGE community that I mentioned before. The XCHANGE community does, first and foremost, facilitation training. And so I became a part of that facilitation training based on the work that I did. And Dr. Daniel Friedland, we called him Dr. Danny, so I'll call him Dr. Danny, was also a part of that community. And really bent John's ear around this whole idea of, as a facilitator, one of the most important things that we can do is develop ourselves and our inner world. And what's happening inside of us when we are leading groups is going to show up in the room. And as a facilitator, we're a guide on the side. We're not a sage on the stage. We're not there to be the expert. We're there to bring out the wisdom in the room. And so in order to do that, we really have to develop our inner worlds. And he'd written this book, Leading Well from Within. There's some incredible foundational frameworks and concepts that he was like, I want to teach this inside of XCHANGE. And John was like, I love it. Let's do it. I don't know if I should wait for my dog to stop barking.
We can
Okay.
edit. So
Okay.
it's not a problem.
Okay. So he started coming inside of the community, teaching his frameworks and concepts of this inner world of leadership, and this idea that as humans, when we come into a room or into a conversation or into an experience and we are well resourced, which means that we are full, we feel good, and we're able to overflow in a generative way to other people in a positive way. When we're well resourced, then we're best able to show up as that guide on the side in the room.
Can I ask
And that
you,
was all.
can I
Yes.
ask you, what does it mean to be well resourced? What is
Well,
that?
I thought I just said it, but I'll say it again. Being well resourced means from the inside, you are in a place of, there's lots of different ways to say this, of balance. Your nervous system is regulated is another way. It's kind of a trend to talk about being regulated. When you are resourced, you are giving from a place of overflow, not a place of depletion. So when we think of it in terms of the demands of our daily lives, we have all kinds of demands on us, right? Things that we have to manage, things that we have to deal with, both at work and at home. And when those demands exceed our resources or exceed our ability to manage them, then we tend to be operating from a place of depletion or reactivity. But when we flip that and we're well resourced from the inside, the challenges can come, the hard things can come, and we have a sense of resilience or ability to manage the things that come our way. So I don't know, does that answer that question?
Yeah. And did you learn this before you went through all these traumatic moments?
I did. I learned it from the book I was just talking about, Leading Well from Within.
Okay.
So Dr. Danny came into the XCHANGE community. I'm going to try to make this a little bit faster. Shared some of his frameworks.
Take your time. We're fine.
Shared some of his frameworks around being well resourced. And what we realized in teaching that inside of the organization to the facilitators, they started to be able to invite guests to that. And we realized this is something that really needs to be more out in the world. And Dr. Danny had been taking it out into the world, but combining the way that we facilitate at XCHANGE, which is a very systems focused whole system, again, guide on the side methodology with the inner work, we felt like was a real powerhouse to be able to create transformation inside of leadership teams, inside of organizations. And so we started taking this, inviting people to our 3-day immersive training called Awakening Conscious Leadership. So it wasn't just for the facilitators anymore. We invited guests to that. And then we also started going into organizations and leading leadership teams through the Awakening Conscious Leadership work. So when I say conscious leadership, it is about how we lead from the inside out. It is about how we become well-resourced and how we're very deliberate about how we resource ourselves. And we teach practices inside of our training that help regulate the nervous system. And very simply, taking a deep breath, meditating. There's many, many different ways that we can resource ourselves. We can go take a walk in nature. We can go sit in the sunshine and be resourced. So we teach a lot of practices, which by no means is, the full way that we as human beings can resource ourselves or fill ourselves up to be more of a resource then for other people. But the real differentiator is a lot of leadership development is just too much about the concepts and the cognitive and the head and thinking. And we can't just think our way into being a better leader. We have to involve the whole body. We have to know how to have a certain presence when we're with people, how to, again, from the inside out, influence people, how to be a good listener. We don't need to be the expert. We don't need to know it all. We need to know how to be okay within inside of ourselves and ask great questions of our team and have a dynamic of safety in our team and in our group so that we can innovate, so that we can normalize struggle. It truly is a different way of thinking about leadership. Leadership for so long has been, I'm the sage on the stage, I'm the expert, I have all the answers, and all you people need to go out and execute the vision. Well, that's not going to work. It already doesn't work.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right, though. So this form of conscious leadership for, let's say, the executive director or the supervisor or the CEO is how they become the facilitator of others' leadership.
Oftentimes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes,
yes.
They, out of their own resourcefulness, they see the resourcefulness of their people, the potential of their people.
Yes.
And then they create the environment which allows for them to discover their own resources. Am I right about that?
There's a lot of what you're saying is completely spot on. It's completely spot on. And I just want to add to that it's about the inner resourcing, and how we manage that in ourselves. How do we stay regulated in our nervous system? How do we not get overly reactive or overly stressed? Because that shuts our brain down. It shuts down our ability to think clearly. Then it's also that, let me finish this part.
Okay, sorry.
That's kind of what I said. That's what I've already said. But it's also the tools and the ways you ask questions and the ways that you've reframed things as a leader. That part is the little bit more of a cognitive part. So it's not that I'm saying it's just a body approach. It's a brain and a body approach. We have to have tools for, hey, I'm a leader. I know psychological safety is an important concept coined by Amy Edmondson with her research with Google. We know that's an important concept. We know that. And how do we actually do that? So we create, we have a tool with here's, some of the key pieces, like equal voices is a key tenet of psychological safety. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's a sentence starter for how you invite voices in a meeting. Hey, Ed, I haven't heard you say much today. I'd love to hear your opinion. So it's both what's happening inside of us and how do we resource ourselves, and then the practical tools and the ways that we actually, the operating system for how do we actually do this in a team. Because a lot of training is, here's the concept, here's the idea, here's the philosophy, but it's not, how do you actually make that happen? Not just from an outside perspective, but from the outside and inside perspective being joined.
What happens on a team when you have a couple of people who are resistant to this idea? How do you adjust?
There's always at least a couple of people who are resistant to this idea. So, one of the best things that in my experience, and this is why I also love working with my partner, because he has a real strength for enrolling people and helping them see the why behind things. For me, it's always been about presence and about holding the space for that discomfort of disagreement or skepticism, and then allowing people the space to, and the invitation is go all in, play full out, try it. And if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Like, we don't want you to do it if it doesn't work for you. However, what I will say is most people, when they try, maybe it's just one of these practices or tools works for them. They get a different result. They see something differently, and then they're enrolling themselves into it. And so it's a combination of, hey, the agreement is if you're going to be a part of this as a team, you're going to be willing to play full out. And most people are willing to do that, even if they disagree. And then, as I said, if you find one thing that resonates, if you realize that taking a deep breath or asking a question this certain way can help you, then it will help you be enrolled in the rest of what we're doing. And we're not necessarily looking for 100% conviction or enrollment. I don't even know if that's possible. But I fully believe in offering and coming from a place of full presence myself, and from a place of heart. The heart plays a huge role in everything that we do. We talk a lot about heart intelligence. We lean in on the research of the Heart Math Institute, and we create the safety and the space for a skeptic to be there and to be a skeptic.
What happens when the skeptic is the leader of the group?
They probably wouldn't have invited us in.
Okay.
So 9 times out of 10, the leader of the group is who's invited us to share this. And then there's someone on the team that's not interested. And that's the power of leadership, right?
Right.
That leader's philosophy and their, idea for how things work in the world is going to impact the whole team. And that's a lot of what we talk about. We were talking earlier about systems thinking and how one of us affects the system and the system affects each of us, right? It's this interdynamic, interrelationship that we just can't disconnect from. And so it is really powerful when a leader believes in something and brings it in and invites the team to be a part of it, then it happens. And if they're not into it, then it's not going to happen. So
I really do understand this, because I mean, I've lived this way. I don't like to be anxious. I try not to be. But even more so when I go in, I've facilitated groups before. I mean, you may have been in one or two of them past. I was, in one where I was present for the presentation before my presentation, which was going to be on a 2-hour community building presentation. And the person before me was speaking on economic development. And he was attacked by 5 people in the group of 45 because they didn't like the way their organization approached economic development. It was ugly. It was really ugly. So I went to the director of this group and I said, I think we need to debrief. And so we began to debrief. I said, so what do you think went on over the last hour? And 17 of the 45, including the gang of 5, as I called them, were, and then I silenced them after about 20 minutes. I said, okay, the rest of you get to talk. Tell me what you think. And then that's when this cathartic experience of being able to express what I feel changed the whole climate of the group. And because some of them were mad because they felt like they had wasted their time, the others could say, oh, well, I'm sorry. And that coming together then created a level of internal peace within the group, so that our last hour together was really about community building. And that we built community because we were thrown into a conflict of community. And so I totally see what you're doing. And that was so much fun because many sense, I was granting them the right to be themselves and to allow for whatever was going on in them to come out in a safe and non-judgmental, non problematic way.
I love that. And something you said reminded me of something we talk about a lot with psychological safety. And it's the two questions we always ask ourselves when we're walking into any group or when we're a part of a group, which is, can I be myself and be fully accepted and received by this group? And if we
it would be okay.
and if we feel like we can be received as ourselves in that room, then we're willing to have skepticism, right? We're willing to throw out a crazy idea. Otherwise, we're going to be shut down. We're not going to feel safe to do that. And safety, in a lot of ways, if you want to boil down everything I'm talking about in conscious leadership to one thing, it might be safety, because when we feel safe in our bodies, that is being resourced.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when somebody flies off the handle or loses it, like they did in that meeting, there is an attack on their safety, right? They go into amygdala hijack and they just react because they're not feeling safe in their body. One of their fundamental beliefs has been maybe questioned, or a value of theirs has been, misread or overridden or whatever it might be. And so when we think about being resourced and we think about showing up with other people and to experiences, it's about having safety in our bodies and feeling safe inside of ourselves. And then the same thing applies in groups, right? If I can come into a group, be it my family or my work team or a client, if I can feel safe in that room based on the conditions that are set, like you were talking about the conditions that you set for that room, right? These people over here, they're going to talk now and you're going to listen. And then we're going to figure out, how does all this come together? Safety in a room and in a group is a lot about both. And it's not either or. Polarity is what has gotten us to where we are today. We have to start to see the whole, and we have to start to see, you can think one way and believe one way, and I can hold space for that, even though what I think and believe might be completely different from that. And there's a voice and there's room for all of it. We've just gotten so contentious and so unsafe in being honest with what we believe in and who we are in groups, that this idea of safety in groups is, I think it's one of the things that would literally change the world. If we could have more people feel safe in their own bodies and more people feel safe in the classrooms, in the courtrooms, in all the places where people are coming together.
So let me ask you, let me give you a scenario here and kind of speak into it to help me understand this a little bit. You're the facilitator. You're fully resourced. You're in charge and you're facilitating this group. And one of the members of the group becomes very anxious, flies off the handle, begins to attack you, begins to attack the group, attack the world, and so it's become very disruptive. How you relate to that person in the midst of their crisis is sending a signal to the rest of the group as to how you would treat them in a similar crisis. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how do you sort of pull the person off the ledge when they're...
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. One is you do everything you can so that person doesn't get on the ledge before you even start the meeting. So every meeting I lead, we have music, we have breathing, we have some form of connecting with each other. And so depending on the group, I know for some people they're thinking, what is that? Music? What are you talking about? something that gets us into a place of community, connection, belonging, safety. And it's different for everybody. So it's not like 100% guaranteed you're always going to create these conditions. But before the meeting even starts, I'm doing everything I can to set the stage for what is expected in that room. I'm doing it through the communications that I send. I'm doing it by opening with a meditation or a breathing or music or a opening connection in the room with people, connecting with each other. We always call it start with heart. So if we start with heart and we set the stage with this is how this is going to go, right? Then we're pre-framing what's going to unfold, right? Now, that doesn't mean that there's still not going to be somebody that might fly off the handle. There could be, but you always want to think about what can I do before I even start to set the stage for safety, to set the stage for heart and connection, and the humanness of this experience is the most important thing. And how we interact with each other is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, in that moment, as you said, the most important thing for me to do is to resource myself so that I'm not also triggered. Take a deep breath. Invite a deep breath in the room. Validate the person. I hear you. I see you. This has upset you. This has triggered you. This has shaken you. I see that. And thank you for being brave enough to be honest with how you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
And again, there's no guarantees here, but every time that we signal safety to ourselves and to other people, the dial on that starts to turn down, because then his amygdala literally starts to calm down. If he or she actually takes the deep breath, the brain gets reoxygenated. The parasympathetic nervous system starts to kick in and balance that sympathetic overdrive response. And I always see it as like we work with those things when they're happening. We don't push against them. We don't push them away. We work with them. We invite the discomfort that may come from that, and we see what happens.
So how do you take this? I guess it's a methodology. Is that a fair way to describe it? It's a methodology.
Yeah, an approach, I guess you could call it. Sure.
Okay. How do you apply this in a family, and in particular as a mom with your children?
Well, I actually think that's the most important environment to create these the sense of safety, and the most challenging. If you think about family dynamics, and a lot of this we can all take back to our own families of origin, oftentimes because of the way the world is set up and because of the way we work, especially as Americans, our family often gets the most depleted version of ourselves at the end of the day. So we've given our all, we've given our best, we've used our brain power. We come home, we're tired, we're under-resourced, and then, a kid does something, a kid, gets a bad grade, or falls down the stairs, or my kid yesterday was at the neighbor's house and hit her head. And, watching how I respond to that, to me, that's the most important place for me to check in with my own resourcefulness and reactivity. And it's also the most challenging, because a lot of times, like I said, we're coming into the home after a long day of, being resourced and using those resources throughout the day. So I think one of the most important things to do is, and one thing that we do in our home is, we talk a lot about breath, taking a breath. We talk, my kids see me every single morning doing breath work. I journal, I do gratitude, I do tapping or emotional freedom technique. My kids and I do that every night together. So I bring them in on the tools. And whenever I'm being reactive, after that moment, I get to then sit down with my kids and say, I really don't like the way that I just showed up for you, and I'm sorry. and I'm going to do my best to, not do that again.
Yeah.
And, help them to use the same kind of tools. I never got taught things like this. I just got taught like, oh, you're too emotional. You're too like, I never got taught, well, then take a deep breath or learn how to meditate or just pause for a minute, which is another key component of what we teach in conscious leadership is pausing. Just taking a moment to, as I used to say, count to 10 when you're really angry, right?
Release that tension.
Yeah. And just let it run through you, because it will. But if you immediately react to it, there's no space for that to happen. There's no space for you to just be with it and let it go. You're just going to follow the train down the tracks. And so at home, I really do think another big piece of what I believe in is slowing down together. I mean, families are so busy. There's so much going on. We have 5 kids. They're all in multiple different sports. They have multiple practices. Boom, boom, boom. We're here. We're there. Some nights we're out till, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And it's this run, 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 go, go, go. So very deliberately, time to slow down. We're going to sit around the dinner table. Everybody's phones are going away, and we're going to have a conversation together about the day, about whatever we want to talk about. We play games together, but deliberately having that space to slow down and to teach. We have to teach our nervous systems how to slow down, because this world is going so fast and we get notifications and beeps and bells and whistles going all the time and practices here and there. Our nervous system doesn't know how to slow down. Yeah. And so very deliberately teaching them to slow down, letting my kids, see me read a novel in the evening instead of being on my laptop or working, I think that's a huge, huge piece of it for us, is really living into the work as imperfectly as we do, and teaching them that, you can do this too. You can do these things too. You can learn these tools too. And yeah, that's the journey that we're constantly on. And we always laugh when we teach conscious leadership inside of organizations. We say, if this really worked at home, we could charge a lot more. Well, it does. It just takes even more deliberate effort in some ways.
It sounds like it would also be highly effective in schools.
100%.
Because there is a whole lot of anxiety in schools, a lot of conflict, a lot of unexpressed antagonism and anxiety. I mean, it's, I've seen it, and I mean, I saw it years ago, but I know it's even more so now. And
yeah, one thing my daughters, 2 of our girls do, and the other kids may have some version of this as well, is every morning in their room, they start with what they call morning meeting, and they put all the kids in a circle and they teach something, some little tidbit of something. And sometimes it's breathing. Sometimes it's just close your eyes and, feel your feet, feel your hands, a moment of mindfulness. And it's almost always a question that the teacher presents to the group. And it can be, a fun question, like, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? But allowing for that time of deliberate connection and pause before we just jump into the work, it creates a culture or an environment of interconnectedness, and that, our collaboration together and our connection as a class is more important than anything that we get done today. And, that's my philosophy at home too. Our ability to connect with each other, our relationship with each other is more important than anything that we need to get done, either separately or together. And I also think that translates into teams and organizations.
Yeah, my daughter and son-in-law work at a large church in Pennsylvania, and the church is organized around conversation groups. Mm-hmm. And they even have the preschoolers in conversation groups.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah, me too. And
I love that.
I think because that's something that's really missing in most of our lives, is we don't have conversations.
Yeah. And we're wired to co-regulate. So we talk about
Yeah.
self-regulation of the nervous system, but the examples we're talking about now are how we co-regulate together. And so I love what you're saying about the conversation groups. And that's in essence, when I talk about the exchange facilitation methodology, that's what we're doing is we're presenting generative questions and inviting conversations that bring out the collective wisdom of the group. And it can be, on a certain topic, or it can just be a way for us to reflect and connect through our own stories. Um,
So let me ask you this. If one of our viewers or listeners would like to experience this, get involved with this sort of thing,
mhm.
how do they go about doing that?
Yeah. So probably the best thing to do is just reach out directly to me, and I can give you a link to just, shoot me an email or even schedule a 15-minute chat to connect. We occasionally do public workshops, 2-hour public workshops on our conscious leadership. But I think when this is going to air, we're going to have just delivered one. And so I'm not sure when the next one is going to be, but if you'll reach out to me, I'll make sure to let you know when the next one is if you're interested, or, just happy to connect or chat.
Yeah, and are there other people like you out there?
Well, there's no one else
I
exactly
know
like
that.
me, right? Just like there's no one else exactly like you. But in terms of other people doing
Let me
this,
rephrase the question. Is there a movement of conscious leadership?
well, there's many movements of conscious leadership. Actually, I've learned as I go along the way. Conscious capitalism is one that we're pretty intimately connected with. If anybody's interested, check that out, look that up. Um, And yeah, there's quite a few actually. I just met a new woman yesterday who does conscious leadership. So there are a lot of us, and I think there's some similar philosophies and some overlaps. And again, I think our philosophy, I think we share this, Ed, is just, it's all about how do we come together? How do we collaborate? How do we not say, "Ooh, I own this concept and this is mine and this is my
Oh yeah.
intellectual
Oh
property,"
yeah.
but how do we be open source and share resources so that we can be our most resourced selves, right?
Well, to a certain extent, if you give it away, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you do have to make a living. You have to pay the light bills.
yeah.
You have
Of
to
course, yeah.
feed your children, put them in schools, and all of that. But at the same time, you share your ideas. And this is um, I think there's a phenomenon like this that's beginning to take place online, where there are communities that form around an idea. I interviewed a fellow who created a bourbon community on
Mm,
Facebook. Named
nice.
Randy Sullivan, Bourbon Real Talk, and he's got 26,000 people involved, and they have set up the parameters of being a part of the community.
Hmm.
It's very close to what you're talking about,
Mm,
so that if you express a like for a particular bourbon and you don't want anyone to contradict you, you say this is not open to discussion.
hmm. Hmm.
And so the community respects that,
Hmm. Yeah.
and which means there's safety. And Randy started this. I was just with Randy last week. And Randy started this because of his brother who had taken his life, felt like he didn't have anyone in his life
Mm,
to
mm, mm,
care for him.
hmm.
So Randy began this community around this thing he loves, bourbon. And at the end of his show, he says, um, if you feel like that no one out there loves you, I want
Mm,
you to know I love you.
mm.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And what he, and on my interview with him that was out came out in February, I asked him, so what's the effect? What have you seen happen with this? And he talked about 2 or 3 guys who had contacted him to say that because of this group,
Mm,
they had decided not to take their life.
mm. Mhm, mhm,
So what you're doing is part of something much larger
mhm,
in scope, and it's worth acknowledging that,
mhm.
and maybe there'll be some people who want to reach out to you and find out more about this.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really a fantastic thing that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ed. And thank you so much for having me on the show. This was really an enjoyable conversation.
It really has been. And I will be thinking about this the rest of the day because I'm going to go. I know I have some encounters with people coming up
Mm.
over the next few days, and I'm going to have this in my mind as I go into thinking about how to meet with these people. And so it's great.
Awesome. That's beautiful.
So thank you, Adair.
Wonderful. You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening. Please subscribe and hit the like button. But even more so, please comment, ask a question, engage with us in conversation so that we know that you exist, but also know that you want to be a part of a conversation that others are a part of. And we'll be very grateful to hear from you. So I thank you, and thank you again, Adair. And so we'll see you all next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.